would love to. So first of all, it is an honor. So you'll understand maybe more when you understand my role, but even our church, if you don't know it well. But my name is Brandon Donaldson, and I currently am the Senior Director of Product and Partnership for a team we call Open Network. Open Network is the team that gets to serve pastors and church leaders. So there's the tie that was really cool. So such an honor to partner with Lakeside, with Pastor Rich, all of you, in any way that we can. We love it. That's what we get to do as a team. We know that that's a rare gift and blessing, and we know it's a stewardship thing. So we get to do that on behalf of Life Church here on the Open Network team. So I say here because I'm actually in my offices, so I'm standing up. I have another computer. If something goes down, technology, unless power goes down, which I can't promise you it won't. We've had some crazy ice storms here. Trees have been falling over. But so far so good. So, but I'm looking at the team here, and just to give you a little bit, Open Network is where we basically take anything that we create here. You've talked to Justin Edge and our kids stuff. I'm guessing you might have seen or used some of our kids stuff, but we give it all away for free. All of it, curriculum. I mean, we have building plans, we have HR documents, we have full kids curriculums and youth message series with all of the videos and graphics, original files, so churches can use it and make it their own. We started doing that in 2006, a really cool God story where our leadership, people were asking for some of the sermons and those kinds of things, and God just laid it on our leadership's heart. And there's a really cool God story in the middle of this, as there always is. And it just was very clear that we were supposed to give it away. So we started giving things away, and we called it Open in 2006. And God has blessed tremendously in all that we get to do. Now we give away the Bible app. We have another team here called YouVersion. Yeah, I'm sure you're familiar. It's changed my life. It's been an incredible app, but it's an app that has went around the world. Definitely is global, and just an awesome thing that we also give away for free. And all of that came from that decision. We say it around here, like, we will lead the way with irrational generosity. We truly believe it is more blessed to give than receive, which was Jesus' words, as Paul said. And we've seen it. You just can't outgive God. And so our church has experienced that. Our church is very generous, as a church as they give. And I get to be a part of a team that is a digital mission. We get to focus on the outside, so that I get to talk to you guys a little more, just talking Bible and just some things God's doing in our heart, becoming a man of influence is just an extra blessing, to be honest, because this is the heart of it. We might build products, but our heart is that we are helping you fulfill the mission God has for your church. So that's me. I've been here for almost 20 years. So 20 years next year. So I've been here at Life Church for a long time. If you didn't know, Life Church we're 36 campuses now in the U.S. We just launched a new one right in the middle of a pandemic. It was amazing. And if you're familiar, Kansas City area, sort of the central north part of the U.S. And we just launched another campus there. That's our fourth, I believe, in that area. And so we have, I'm trying to think of anything else. So I was here at the beginning when we had one building, one campus. And now buildings just isn't that powerful to talk about anyway. We never know if you can't use them or not. So the other thing here that we created Open Network is the Church Online platform. I believe you guys use that. I'm not sure. Yeah. And we give that away for free. As you can imagine, in 2020, it's been a huge blessing for the church, but us too. I'm telling you, I just got to tell you this God story because I think it'll be encouraging when we think about our own lives and being influential. But literally 2 years ago, we realized our current platform, the version of it. So I'm talking about the software that allows us to do community all around the content. So that's what we call Church Online. So we built this software platform so churches could use it. We give it away for free, but it was coming to capacity. Like when we had hit Easter or something, we were pushing servers and we were just like, this is about all she can handle. And we just began to pray about it and realized, you know what? And this was a huge decision, but we need to build this thing from the ground up. So we had a version 3. We built version 4 from the ground up, which is what you're using. And we didn't have a deadline. We didn't know COVID was coming, but God did. And so we had an artificial deadline, and it ended up being a very, very real deadline. And we said, you know what, we're going to finish this. So our team, a lot of work, finished that at the new year. And we had beta churches that were using version 4. We came out of beta, which is sort of, if you don't know software world, you might hear beta. That's the churches that are willing to try it out, see all the bugs and make sure it's working. So it came out of beta in February, and then you know what happened in March. And the whole reason we built it was for scalability, stability, and simplicity. And we got to test that really quick. So it was amazing. We have had by far more signups, more ministry, more everything happened in the last 7 months than we have in the last 7 years. And you guys are a part of that. So yeah, that's a little bit longer, but it's hope that just to get a scope of what we get to be a part of together is just really, really crazy. So if you guys are ready, John, we ready to just jump in?
Yeah, sorry, I was pressing the wrong button instead of to unmute myself. So yeah, just dive straight in, Brandon.
Okay. Well, it's really cool. If I'm looking up, I've got a camera here. I've got a setup here where I'm looking at all of you, and so isn't technology amazing? So although we have had some crazy challenges this year, isn't it amazing that we're able to do things like this? Because this is more than just being able to meet as you guys are meeting and probably are somewhere close in person. I'm able to meet with you, which would probably just not happen unless we were willing to make a trip, a large one. So I just, even though I know I'm a part of some of these technology pieces for the church, I've never stopped to just thank God that we get to be a part of this time. And I do believe that it's on purpose. I love when John was telling me about what the big theme was for what you guys are hoping to accomplish the next few weeks, becoming a man of influence. I know in my own life, this is something that is a huge desire. I love being a part of a church that is hungry to be a part of the wave of God, wherever it is. Like, God, let us be a part, use us in any way. And there's something about, like, I want to be a part of the impact that's happening. I want to be in the middle of those things. I think it's in us in different ways, but most of us in that way. So when I thought about becoming a man of influence, there's some things you can actually see. I've got a gift somebody gave me, and it says, embrace the friction. If you walked out these doors and said that, it has become a phrase that has been tied to me for many years now, because it's become a principle in my life that God just continually brings up. And I'm going to log back in here. And one of the things that I wanted to talk about, I was like, okay, if I got to meet some people that I've never met before, I get one time to talk with them about something I believe is going to make the biggest impact. And it's probably going to be a deep life principle for me. And so I really want to talk about becoming a man of influence. You have to embrace the friction. And I just want to walk through it a little bit. And here's one of the differences. I know you all are going to take some time to talk, and you get to talk through it. But I know that I have up to an hour. The last thing you want to do is watch me talk for an hour on a Zoom call. That is bad Zoom etiquette. So I might stop on each point, and maybe there's just some things that's like, whoa, I was just thinking through this. And maybe there's a bit of a conversation. I think that's the unique thing about this piece. And then I know that you guys will continue to really open up some more things together as a group, because you guys have been together for a while. But I just want you to know that if you want to unmute, you want to say something, jump in. This is a Zoom call. This is not me standing in a pulpit. And I believe God's going to do a whole lot. So here's 3 things. When I was thinking about this, if I was going to sort of break this down and sort of explain my thinking on this, that I believe is going to be really impactful for you, definitely has for me. Embracing the friction, there's really 3 things that I think of that you need to do to embrace the friction. 1 is breathe. 2 is embrace. 3 is become. I'm going to go through that, but again, that's breathe, embrace, and become. I did a talk a while back, and I told John I don't get to do this as much because of my role, but I love it. And there's a lot of incredible pastors here at Life Church. It's a unique model and move that are incredible communicators. They love to do it, but don't do it quite as much. And so to have an opportunity just to talk with a group of people and just share what's God's been sharing with me might actually be longer than an hour. So I'm gonna have to really be careful because you guys just open the floodgates. But I did this talk a while back to a group of pastors, and many of them I knew actually really, really well. And I called it Everything Oxygen Jesus. And this is under this idea of breathing. You know, Romans 11:36 says, this is New Living Translation, but for everything comes from him and exists by his power and is intended for his glory. Everything comes from him, exists by his power, and is intended for his glory. It's from him, it's for him, it's by him. Everything. You know, I mean, I've been a pastor for a long, long time. It's been, you know, over almost 20 years now, just even here. And you can read these scriptures over and over, and you sometimes miss the gravity of just words like everything, everything. This is why I like this word breathe. You know what's interesting too, and I was going to share this at the end, but I'm gonna hit the punchline early so you guys can begin to think through this, right? So you know the Holy Spirit is just an incredible gift that Jesus told his disciples. He's like, look, I've got to leave. They didn't want him to leave, but he's like, trust me, you want me to leave because there's someone coming that's going to be even better. And this is the Holy Spirit. And Spirit, literally, as many of you have heard this many times probably, but the Greek word for Spirit is pneuma, which literally means breath or life, soul, the very source. So think about that when I say breathe, and I'm going to, I'll tell you where I'm going, but that's the punchline, pneuma. We literally have the Spirit of the living God that is living in us. We are the temples. We are the 21st century temples, as Joachim, if you ever heard Joachim speak, a pastor in Sweden. And I think that is an amazing truth that no matter how much you have thought of it or think of it, you need to understand. And that's why I want to, the first thing I talk about is breathe. So there's a rule of three. I don't know if you've heard the rule of three, but there's some really important things to us physically, right? To live, to survive. So you've got food, you've got water, and you've got oxygen. The rule of three just gives you a general idea of the importance because priority matters. You know what I'm talking about? Like, so food is really important. And the rule of three says, you know, it's about 3 weeks you can go without food. So that's just a general, but it's weeks, right? Weeks you can go without food. But if you go any longer, you cannot live without food for long. Now, water is more like 3 days. It's just days you can go without water. But oxygen is minutes, 3 minutes. So if I asked you what's most important, then once you understand the rule of three, obviously it's oxygen, right? But how often do you think about that? You know, I mean, how often do we think about oxygen? Well, I'm going to take a moment because we're talking about the first thing to become a man of influence. You've got to breathe to embrace the friction. And here's some interesting facts about oxygen. Remember the punchline. And I'm going to let God and the Holy Spirit, who is in you right now, in every moment, in every breath, is going to bring a lot of cool stuff from this, all right? So here's some real interesting facts about oxygen. Did you know oxygen gives you energy? So 90% of your energy comes from oxygen, and only 10% from food and water. And what's crazy is the things that change the food into energy and those things actually is spearheaded by, oh, I'm glad I warned you. So the power just went off. I can't, it really has been, we have an ice storm, but all of the leaves are still on the trees. So that's not a good thing when the water comes and it freezes. It doesn't happen too often, but it happened. And we have actually huge trees going down. And so power is just going out all across our city. So there you go. Hopefully we'll trust God in the timing on all this. So here we are. Okay, we are back. All right. So we were talking about oxygen. So 90%, we got that, right? You guys got that part, 90% of your energy comes from oxygen. Pretty amazing. Aerobic respiration is up to 15 times more. So that means with oxygen, right? Is 15 times more efficient than anaerobic, which means without oxygen, which is two types of cellular respiration. So 15 times more. So oxygen, there it is again. Oxygen heightens concentration, alertness, thinking, and memory. Oxygen improves your immune system, your digestion, and your sleep. It counters aging. It strengthens your heart. Pneuma. It destroys the harmful bacteria in your bodies without affecting the beneficial bacteria that you need. Pretty amazing. Calms your mind, stabilizes your nervous system. You know, you guys are probably familiar with the cleansing breath, right? Maybe you do that. You should if you ever need moments of stress release. It's actually proven that this cleansing breath helps. So, and the more that we study it, and I'm actually very interested in this, I have children that are adopted, so children that come from trauma. You know, one of the most important things that they learn? Simple cleansing breath. Why? Because of oxygen. Calms your mind, stabilizes your nervous system. It's a really cool physical aspect that oxygen gives you. So it's not just survival life, but abundant life. Did you know this, that cancer attacks every organ in your body except the heart because of its abnormal supply of oxygen? Cancer can't touch where too much oxygen is at. So I know you're making the ties. It's just fun. 16 breaths a minute happens. There'll be about 960 breaths during the hour I'm with you. We'll each take almost 1,000 breaths, 23,000 breaths a day. Constantly with us, critical to every life and function, the unseen force that affects everything in life. So here's the deal. One of the things that you might hear and we might talk about, but that you have to understand as you are a follower of Christ. And if that's you want to become any person of influence, you want to do the things that God's called you to, we have to learn how to spiritually breathe. Or maybe better way to put it is we have to be aware of our spiritual breathing. We have to be aware of the breath. We have to be aware of these spiritual lungs that we use. You know, it's something you don't even have to think about in life until it's gone, right? Until you're lacking it, then it's a problem. And I think too many times as Christians, what we don't talk about it enough is this idea of everything is for him. Everything is by him. Everything is in him. Now, here's the hard part about this, that maybe you're thinking, you've thought before, I sure have, is, okay, what does that practically mean? I need to do something. What does it mean to breathe? What does it mean to live by the Spirit? Or as Paul says, to walk by the Spirit and not by the flesh. What does it mean to do that in every day? One of my favorite books that maybe if you're into some classic Christian literature, this is a great one, Practicing His Presence, is a great classic Christian book that really goes through an abbot as he goes through a day and basically tries to practice the presence of God. One of the practical ways he does it is tries to think of Jesus in every minute. So the whole thing is a journal of him doing this. And there's a new revision of Brother Lawrence and other that he does it as well. And it's just their journal entries. And it is, I went through it before and had tears, and you just sense this thing of just them trying to say, how do we just bring and think of Jesus in every moment, every minute? What would that do? How would that change our lives? And this is a quote from that book. He says, "Oh, if we but knew the need we have of God's presence If we could only see how greatly we need the Lord's assistance in everything, if we could really see how helpless we are without him, we would never lose sight of him, not even for a moment. So I think the question would be, for you, as you're thinking through this, is how do you practice his presence? Or maybe, what does breathing look like to you? Like what's the thing that needs to change, or do you need to think about when you're talking about that? Because what I love about Christ and our relationship is it's so personal, and it's so intimate. And so the question is, how do you practice his presence? Charles Spurgeon put it this way. He says, if Christ be anything, then he must be everything. I like that. If Christ be anything, then he must be everything. And all of these things are going to go together, but I'd love to just stop and just as we're thinking through breathe. And what spurs in you as we even talk about oxygen? Just the characteristics of oxygen is so incredible when you think about the analogy that God obviously knew. Even at the beginning in Genesis 2:7, the Lord God formed man, and what did he do? He breathed his life into him. There's just this picture of breath throughout. So the first thing we got to do is breathe. Just reading that book, practicing his presence has been one of the things that I've tried to put in my life. Sort of similar, Pastor, like when that anything. So I work, here at a church, which is amazing, but I work on products, Southport products for the church, which is really cool. But I tell our engineers, software engineers, and all of these guys, like, what does it look like for you to remember Jesus in everything, every decision, every thought, every problem, every challenge? It's funny how we will just put God in a box over here. Here's my spiritual life. Here's my work life. Here's my family life. Here's these separate things. And that is not the intention of the Christian life. To truly become a follower of Christ and to be a man of influence and to start this thing, what I'm going to call embracing the friction, you've got to breathe this idea of it's got to be everything in everything. And I think it is interesting that just with oxygen, because we do this quite a bit in our family, that cleansing breath idea is it's scientifically proven how it changes everything. And I guess the question would be, how often do we do that spiritually? And how has culture in the world sort of took us away from those moments of actual spiritual breathing, intentional breathing? There's just something powerful there. So I love this idea of breathe. One of the big idea for that is this, that how is it, like the scripture we read in Romans, that we are always aware and understanding that everything comes from him, by him, and for him. Everything in our lives, everything that we do, everything we think. And that leads me to the second one. So first we need to breathe. Second, we need to embrace. And this really is that word, embracing the friction. Embrace is a word I use very specifically and on purpose. And really this is about what I call embracing the friction. But notice that when we go through, and friction could mean all kinds of things. It could be pain, shortcomings, it would be challenges in your life, hardships we're going through. I know that this has affected all of us. Like Chris was talking about, this is something that in some way we all have been affected, some very heavily. And I hope that you guys are talking about that as well. It's very important because we're going through some hard times. But the one thing about the gospel, one thing about the Bible is that you will find it when you begin to look, and if you haven't seen it, trust me, after this talk, you will see it everywhere. But the gospel is built on friction and pain. Think about literally the gospel. I mean, our salvation, everything that we look to is a cross. Like one of the worst, pieces of torture that probably we've seen, and yet it represents hope for us. This is what our God does. This is what our God does on this side of heaven, right? He's able to turn these things. So when I say embrace the friction, there's some things that we can do when we hit those moments. We could ignore them, and we've all been there. I've done that where, maybe we just ignore this, it'll go away, or we'll wait till and we do something else. We can endure it, or we can embrace it. I think there's a difference. There's a difference. So Psalms 119, the whole chapter, by the way, if you want to embrace the friction chapter, Psalms 119, just read that, you'll get. But in verse 71, it says, "It was good for me to be afflicted so that I might learn your decrees." So there is so much here. Again, I'm telling you something that is, I have like, my personal notes that go for years. So it's always a danger to talk through it. But just think about this. Look at all of the people God chose throughout the Bible. Look at, and to have significant influence. Think about it. And look at their stories. I'll mention a few that I'm sure that you know. David, right? King David. But next time you read a story, or if you think about a story, think about the whole thing. This is not this pretty picture, right? Sometimes we have the kids' version in our head that has the highlights. David is, I can relate to David, right? How about Daniel? This is one of my favorite characters, by the way. But he was literally kidnapped from his country. He's in exile, and basically trying to brainwash him. And we think of his story, which is an amazing story. The disciples, right? These are the ones Jesus chose for himself. These are most likely the ones that they would have loved to have been in the rabbi system. I'm sure, probably didn't make it. That's why they were out doing what their father had done before, or fishing or tax school, whatever it is, because they probably just weren't quite enough for what they probably wanted to do. And yet Jesus chose them. Just think about their story. Think about their story with Jesus. It's full of pain, full of people that with so many shortcomings. And the Bible does not hide those things. Have you noticed this? The Bible is like, it just tells you all of it. It's like, this isn't just the highlight version. This tells you the whole story. It tells you the bad. It tells you the hardships. It tells you the challenges. It tells you the doubts. It tells you all these things. And that's what I love about it. These are the people God chose. Even those that were insignificant in others' eyes. This is the people God chose. So one of my favorites is, and it's right in the very beginning of the Bible. And I'll tell you this, I believe that's important because, and his name was Joseph. So you probably remember Joseph's story. So Joseph goes on, he's one of this is a part of the promise that came way before to Abraham. Now we're getting into generations. Joseph becomes one of the sons of Jacob, soon to be Israel. Looks like he's one of his favorite sons, right? His brothers don't like that too much. And it looks like Joseph really likes it, if you know what I'm saying. He's not a very good people person. He's not reading his brothers really well. And so God gives him a dream. And it's basically, he understands, wow, these are, these sheep bowing down to one. And he realized, oh, that's me. These are my brothers bowing down to me. I can't wait to tell them about it, right? So he tells them about it. Just think about this, Joseph, and who we come across. And then his brothers already not very happy with him. And then it gets worse, right? They sell him into slavery. So they sell him into slavery. He goes to Potiphar's house. Actually, God is with him. It's amazing. He's actually owning all of the things in Potiphar's house. Then he is wrongly accused of something by Potiphar's wife, is thrown into prison. And then God is with him again. And I want to talk about this part in the prison. Because something about Joseph that we see is that he was faithful in the prison. In Genesis 39:23, you'll see this throughout Joseph's life if you've ever read. And when you read this, you'll see it over and over, this kind of statement. And whatever he did, talking about Joseph, and this was when he was in prison, the Lord made to prosper. And there is a time that Joseph is in prison that God doesn't take him out of the prison, but he actually uses what he does in the prison. I think that's key because it says that whatever he did. So Joseph has this dream, is all excited about what this means, is obviously, telling his brothers, seems a little cocky, a little prideful. I'm pretty sure this was a pretty big issue for Joseph. And then all of a sudden he is thrown into something that is just horrible, right? And then it gets worse. And here he is in prison, and then he becomes, he becomes basically, he runs the prison. They trust him with all of it. But I love that it says that whatever he did in the prison, the Lord made to prosper. And here's my question. When we're in the challenges, maybe right now, maybe this really speaks to us because I know we all have our own unique challenges through this time. But what are you doing? Are you doing just enough to get by? Or are you really seeking God? Are you breathing? And are you understanding what it is that he's called you to do right now in the prison? Or are you so much waiting for the big opportunity? This is a big issue with me, right? Man, I want to make the impact. I love pastors and church leaders. I want to see this thing grow. I want to make the impact. But is that the point? Or is the point obedience? Is the point to do what God's called me to do right now, even in the prison? Because Joseph, I guarantee you, the dream was forgotten. Or if it wasn't forgotten, he definitely did not tie all of the threads to where God was going to put him. Do you know what I'm saying? There is no way. He was not thinking that. He was in the prison long enough to be like, this is where I am. And he was faithful in the prison, and God blessed him for what he did. So the question is, what are you doing in your friction? What does that look like? This is the idea of embracing the friction. This isn't just enduring something, but really embracing, saying, God, what do you want to do with me in this? No matter what the challenge is, what do you want to do with me in this? And a lot of times I think it's because we can believe that there's no value in the prison, or there's not much value, or we're just sort of making do. Because a prison for you could be the mundane, or the vision that you thought God would do and he just hasn't. And it becomes just, well, who cares? A waiting period, or this just isn't enough. So the question, what does it mean to prosper in your prison? What does that mean to prosper in your prison? I think that, it could be that people are not responding to you. There could be an attack on your family, on your health. It could be COVID-19 and all the things that has been, hardships in building something, your business, your career, launching something, growing something. Whatever it is, the question is, what does it mean for you to prosper in your prison, to be faithful in your prison? What are you doing? So I want you to see this, and we're gonna, if I can, I might show you a video. So we'll try it. But do I have access, John, to share stuff on here? Yeah, I do. So we'll try it. It's really short, but I think it'll make the point. So this was Joseph. For being faithful in the prison, he used his gifts faithfully in the prison. So he learned, he could interpret dreams. He did that in the prison, right? When the baker and the cupbearer came in, he was able to interpret dreams. He learned and he grew in leadership and management and dealing with people. Think about this, for where he's going to go in hopeless situations, right? So he's managing, he's leading people that are in prison, creating calm in chaos, right? What does it look like to run a well-run prison? Always improving, always taking action to better current situation for others. So this could mean, and the reason I bring that up, how about, what could it look like for us? It could be the right decision, maybe not the easy decision. It could be the consistently casting vision to your family or to your church. It could be faithfulness to your church, faithfulness to your spouse, faithfulness to stewardship and finances, faithfulness in your time with God, right? All of the things. Remember David's life. Man, he was faithful before he ever met Goliath, which gave him the passion and the presence for that moment, right? When nobody was looking, he was passionate about his time with God. How about us? What does that look like? Staying true to your core conviction and beliefs, regardless of influences pressing in, or regardless of if anyone is watching, right? It's integrity. Constant character, regardless of changing circumstances. Bringing your best to everything, continually learning, growing, building. And that's a big one, bringing your best in every moment. So here's an And of course, an American's going to bring something about American football. So I apologize if that's offensive to you guys and real football. So, but I want to, oh, John, is there a way I can share this or not? Can you give me access, or do you know how? Okay. Can you actually see this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the running back. Play action. And Manning's going to heave one. There's a flag. Beckham, a one-handed catch. How in the world?
Oh, my goodness.
And Brandon Carr was back there. I mean, he is insane. How do you make that catch?
Oh, my goodness. This is sick. Put this to music. I don't think he stepped out either. That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen.
Number 39. Penalties decline. Result of the play. Touchdown.
You have to be kidding me. That is impossible. That is absolutely impossible what he just did. That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
It's in the conversation.
Wow. After being fouled. I mean, he was clearly fouled on the play, and that's clean. That's not. Oh, that's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, he does it basically with his thumb and his forefinger. That is ridiculous.
So this is one did you guys sort of see that? You're able to see that a little bit, understand what happened? So this is yeah, they're calling it maybe the greatest catch of all time. So an incredible 50-yard pass, catch it with 3 fingers. It's one of those things kids dream about, when they're playing in the backyard. I want to make that catch. I want to do that. I think it's similar like what we're talking about, those moments of when we talk about becoming a man of influence and those kinds of things. It's the big moments that we normally see from others that many times we can look at and desire. And what was interesting is when you see this catch later on, they began to come out with this. This is him practicing.
Beckham's been lighting it up, as we know, even though he missed the first 4 games, and he is something to watch.
More people out here watching his pregame warm-up, taking pictures, putting stuff up on Instagram to show and show that video footage. And
Odell Beckham Jr.
His normal practice routine.
Okay, yeah, it's one of those. All right. How about the people standing there watching? Like, oh my goodness.
That's impossible.
Okay. Listen to tunes. Okay, yeah, I got it. Good. They can throw with either hand.
So one of the things that I love about that piece is that we see the big moments, and this is a real issue, as you know, in our day and time when it comes to social media and all of these other things. We see these moments, and we're like, man, I want that, but we don't see all that goes into the moments, that goes before the moments. Right? All the practice that happens. One of the things that we can sometimes get away from is this idea of embracing the friction, being faithful in our prisons. And remember, it's not only just the challenges, but just the everyday, the things that nobody sees. Nobody's watching. There's no kind of fanfare. There's nothing happening. But I love a quote from Pastor Stephen Furtick. He says, if you resist the monotonous, you'll miss the miraculous. Sometimes we try to resist the monotonous, the things that are every day, the character things, the things that matter, just the consistent small things every day. Odell Beckham getting out there and he's catching it all different ways with one hand every time he gets out to practice. And then when this one moment happens, he's actually been practicing it. He's actually been practicing. He's a little bit more prepared than it might look. It's not just the highlight, it's all the things that are before it. And I think it's the same in our life. If we resist the monotonous, the things that are on the every day, it's the small things that we are consistent in that leads to the big things that God uses. And that's the same thing with Joseph's story. So I just want to finish this story in Genesis 41, 33 through 38. This is where you know, especially as kids, we remember the story because we know, right? He became a leader of Egypt, like, and it says, but this is what happens when he was brought before Pharaoh. After he tells him remember, Pharaoh had a dream. He interpreted the dream. And he said, and then he continues on. Because remember, he's been practicing in the prison. Remember all those years, leading people in hopeless situations, management, calm and chaos, right? He's been doing things. He hasn't just been waiting for his moment. He's actually been living in the moment. Even in the times where people could just say, forget it, God, I'll just wait until you're ready to get me out of here. But he's been doing. And this is what he says. He says, now let Pharaoh look. This is Joseph talking to Pharaoh. After he says, this is what your dream means, famine, right? Good years, bad years. Now let Pharaoh look for a man discerning and wise and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh take action to appoint overseers in charge of the land. Let him exact a fifth of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 years of abundance. Then let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming. Store up the grain for food in the cities under Pharaoh's authority and let them guard it. Let the food become as a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine, which will occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land will not perish during the famine. So here's the one-handed catch right here. Now the proposal seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his servants. Then the Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this, whom is a divine spirit? And some people forget this part of the story. We just say, oh, he told us the dream, let's make him in charge. No, Pharaoh was a smart man, but Joseph had a plan. He'd been working, he'd been managing, he'd been leading, he had been preparing, and he didn't even know it. I guarantee you, he had been preparing in the prison for the palace. So he comes up with an idea, and Pharaoh looks around and is like, that sounds brilliant. Who else is going to run this but this guy? Let's do this. And there's the one-handed catch, and we're all going crazy. And that's the thing. It's like, yeah, that's what I want. But we forget about the prison. So how do you embrace the prison? What does that look like for you? I think one thing I love, our pastor here always says, is outcome is God's responsibility. Sometimes we worry so much about the outcome, but outcome isn't your responsibility. Outcome is God's responsibility. Obedience is our responsibility, right? Outcome is God's, obedience is ours. Consistency in the small things is going to be really, really important. And then if you just think about scripture, again, I've told you, you're going to see this everywhere. How about the count it all joy when you face trials of many kinds? Seek first the kingdom of God. Love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. This is the greatest, the first and the greatest commandment. Trust in the Lord in everything. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. This is in the Passion Translation, but you're familiar with this scripture, right? But I want you to hear some of these words again as we think about breathe and embrace. And it says, trust in the Lord completely. Not just a whole lot, completely. All. Do not rely on your own opinions. With all your heart, rely on him to guide you. Every bit of it, all of it. And he will lead you in every decision you make. Become intimate with him in whatever you do. And he will lead you wherever you go. And I just want to emphasize those words completely. All your heart, every decision, whatever you do, wherever you go. These are things that are going to be really, really important no matter what you do, no matter what your career is. This isn't about pastor versus layperson. This is about a follower of Christ. When we embrace, it's whatever you do, wherever you go. I love what Pastor Ferry says. That, a lot of times we say practice makes perfect, but that's actually, no, that's not it. Practice makes permanent. I like that. Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent. And what you've practiced in the prison will be the permanent in your palace, right? So then the third thing is become. I know that it's 4 o'clock now, or here it's 4 o'clock, so it's been the hour. But the last is become, and really the idea is this, is that the message that Joseph, I'll set it up with this, Genesis 50:20, which really is a huge part and a huge reason for Genesis. Because Genesis is a mess. It starts off right with the creation, and then you just, oh man, mankind, it's just a mess. It really is, it's bad. And then they picks one person, you know, and then it's still a mess. And there's just this picture. And then Joseph, right? And oh my goodness, what a mess. But here's the message. Here's the message. And this will set us up for become. Genesis 50:20. This is Joseph talking to his brothers. Can you imagine? They're like, oh my goodness, this is Joseph. He's going to kill us. Like he's going to have revenge. But Joseph said, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring about this present result to preserve many people alive. What if Joseph went straight to the palace from the dream? I mean, can you imagine how things would look? How he would treat his brothers? What would happen to that pride that was so prevalent with him? Would he be the same leader? Would God be able to save his people the way that he did? Like, think about this. This is what happened during this year. And sometimes we forget, but Joseph went from this vision of major leadership, sold into slavery, in charge of Potiphar's house, then falsely accused, then to prison, in charge of prison, and then all of a sudden he's in a palace. But the time frame when he was sold, he was 17 years old. He was 30 years old when he went to the palace. 13 years. 13 years between Potiphar's house as a slave, working to working in the prison, being in the prison. 13 years. And yet it was the very thing that set him up and prepared him perfectly for the position that God had for him, the influence that God had for him. God gave him a vision. He was going to become a man of influence. But when he went to his own devices, started telling his brothers, boy, I can't wait till this happens. This will be awesome. He realized that's not how it works in the kingdom. And God used all of the things that normally would take us out. That was meant for evil, and he uses it for good. This is why we embrace the friction. This is why we can. On this side of heaven, God uses the very thing that is the consequences of our sin to further his kingdom and his gospel through us. So those are the things that I believe is most important if you really want to become a man of influence. You got to embrace the friction. We've got to embrace the friction. And that is, we got to breathe. We got to learn to embrace, and we got to become, because it's journey before destination, right? It's not about the destination. It really is about the journey. And when you look at all of those stories that we talked about, look at the journey and look how much God used the journey, even when it seemed impossible, for the influence that he had for their lives. So that's I've got a story, but I know that we're out of time. But I hope that is a blessing to you guys, and hopefully that will create some conversation for you all as you begin to say, hey, what does this mean for me? I'm about to go to a meeting as well, but I'd love to tell it. This is something I actually don't tell a whole lot, and it's something that God gently reminded me of, and I hope that you will hear it the way. What I get excited about is seeing so many of you here, obviously, that I would love to sit and talk more with because of the experience you have in life. But this was about 20 years ago. There was a story. I used to live in Colorado. If you're familiar with the U.S., it's where some big mountains there, great snow-peaked mountains. It's a beautiful place. I lived there for a short time. Had a great friend who was from Australia originally. He was a pastor. And it was actually, I knew I was called to ministry, but was not in ministry yet. And so I'd been serving at a church there. I was serving with him. He became one of my best friends. He was just a passionate guy. He had got to know a guy that his name was Ed, and he was a great friend of his. And this is true. I know this sounds, and this is why I don't tell this story, because it's really fantastic. It's one of those incredible times with God. But I think you'll understand what I'm telling you. But Ed was a Satanist, literally. They had an incredible band that was underground, very well known, that was just singing songs that were just satanic. I mean, not just I'm saying it, they were satanic. I never understood, Tim had become good friends with him. And I told you, he is a passionate Jesus follower. And this guy is literally in the underground with, this music, very good musician, but literally worship that is completely opposite. of what we did. So as a young Christian and sort of bold, I'm thinking, man, that's cool. You know, like that's the kind of story, you know, you want, like that. Just what an incredible thing. Well, Ed invites, they come out with a new CD in the Denver area. This was, you know, more than 20 years ago now. And he invited Tim to the release party. So, and you got to understand, I know it's hard to explain, but he actually thanked Tim on the CD and his family, his kids, like his young kids. He had gotten to know their family. They just had this unique relationship, and they trusted each other. He trusted Tim, and this is where he was. So, as a young Christian and bold, I'm thinking, oh wow, you know, Tim's like, hey, would you go with me? Because he didn't want to go alone, but you know, because this is literally a worship, you know, thing for it's very, very, very dark, but yet they were really close. I said, you know, in all my passion, like, yeah, like, wow, that's crazy. Let's do this. I would love to support you. So we go to this concert. We get in there. It is everything and more than I expected. It was crazy. They start singing, and there was a lot of young people there. I mean, because they were a pretty large underground type band. There was hundreds of young people in the front, in the back. Some people were standing. We were standing in the back, even further, with some tables with like the label and people that were a part of it. They start singing, and it's just, I'm like, man, this is not quite as fun. It was starting getting a little bit like, I don't know if we should be here. And they just start singing these songs. And I mean, they bring out these half-clad nuns, you know, women that were dressed. I mean, I was like, okay. And then I honestly, spiritually, it became heavy. It became really heavy. So all of a sudden, you know, Ed looks out. He's in this moment. And, you know, music's a powerful tool. And he is out there. People are, you know, doing their dancing. They're all dressed in black and all of this stuff. Me and Tim are in the back. And he just looks out, and his face is just different. It is a spiritual moment. And he looks at the crowd and says, I want all of your anger, all of your hate. I want you to focus it on me right now. And he sings this song, and he goes into this song, and it just drops. The room drops. Spiritually, I've never felt such a strong demonic presence. So at this point, I'm no longer the bold guy I'm telling you about. I really am scared for my life. Like, if people find out we're here, I don't think this is a good thing. I really don't. I hear Tim over the music. Tim, passionate, bold, and he's praying. He starts just praying in the spirit. I mean, he's praying. I'm like, okay, take my cue. And so I'm just praying, you know, closing my eyes. I'm nervous. And then it just gets just deathly quiet. They finish the song. Again, if you can think of a worship moment, it is that, but not for Jesus. So there's this heaviness, and all of a sudden, Tim, my Australian friend in Denver, Colorado, in the middle of the silence says, Ed, yells his name. I love you. I'm like, we are going to die. We're going to die. People are like, this is not what you do in this moment. I mean, this is why I don't tell a story. Like, even now, just goosebumps. I'm just like, what are you doing, Tim? He does it again, deathly quiet. Ed, I love you. And then Ed looks up, and remember, I mean, his face had changed. He looks up, and immediately, I'm telling you, immediately when Tim said, I love you, the room changed. I've never felt the love of God in my life, ever. 46 years old now, about to be 47. I've never felt the love of God in such a tangible way than in that moment. It killed the mood. It killed the mode. And so I've never felt this. All of a sudden, I'm feeling all of this stuff. Everybody feels it. The whole thing that was happening is done. Ed looks up, face is different, smiles and said, Tim, is that you? He said, yeah. He said, I love you too. And then he starts thanking his parents for all the years they've supported him. And it just changes. He starts thanking all of the people that are a part of this. And I'm telling you, it's in this moment. So here's the reason. I tell you that because that's an amazing thing, right? I mean, what an amazing, powerful God. And don't ever, the other part of it is remember all the things we talked about: breathe, embrace, and become. Tim had created a relationship with him. Here's what God showed me 20 years later. This is what I want you to take away. That moment was one of the times that I've experienced God like I've never experienced him. But it came from all of the things that Tim had been doing with his Heavenly Father. Are you with me? This is a gentle reminder from my God, I promise you. It was such a sweet reminder for me. I got to experience God like many of you have because of someone else's faithfulness in the prison. Their faithfulness in the challenges, in the things that nobody would understand, the consistency of character, the consistency of seeking God, the consistency of saying when to go, when to not, when to bring someone what to do, how to become a friend to someone that literally is worshiping Satan, how to bridge that gap. What does that look like? What's the things, right? He'd walked years creating that relationship. Can you imagine? And in this moment, God is speaking to him to say, this is the moment to say, I love you. I got to experience it, a spiritual moment, a powerful, powerful moment. But God just reminded me that how many times do I miss those moments because I'm striving to be a pastor that creates moments instead of a follower of Christ experiencing every moment. That was the general reminder. Because that powerful love literally lives inside of you, lives inside of me. He speaks to us. There's a power, the very power that raised Christ from the dead resides inside of each one of us. And that's all that was. This wasn't some crazy thing. That's the power of God. So the easiest way to embrace the friction is to embrace the love, to embrace God. All the rest, it's added. And I think that's just something that as you were thinking through, what this means for you, it's not about what you're experiencing just in your church, what your pastor always brings you. Let it be inspiring like it did, let it be a part. But what is God doing in you? What does he want to do through you? What is he asking you to do right now? Because that same power resides in you. And I just, it was an amazing story, but it was a reminder that I want to be the one that's so close to God that I'm ready at any moment. If Goliath comes up, if Ed is I can hear the Spirit of God clearly because we've been practicing. We've been practicing for years and years and years. And I know the voice of God. I know the pneuma personally. I know, I've practiced being obedient in the small things. I've seen him be faithful over and over and over. And so then when the big thing that everybody looks at and says, oh, there's a man of influence comes, it'll just be another day. It's just another obedient step. And I believe that that's what God is looking for. And I believe that's what really is required if we want to become a man of influence. So there's my story.